You never asked to be here, but here you are, paying rent to exist, feeling the weight of time, watching your dreams decay. Tell me, how is that fair? We begin with a direct emotional blow. The idea that existence is not a gift, but a burden no one asked for. Everyone has felt it, the quiet despair, the existential dread. We'll cite the controversial philosopher David Benatar, author of Better Never to Have Been, and his antinatalist stance that coming into existence is always a serious harm. We'll frame this video as a philosophical and psychological journey, not a rant into a taboo idea. The silent scream, what it means to be born without consent key idea. Birth is the imposition of life. No one consents to it. Start with a haunting story. A real-life tragic case of a child born into suffering, for example. Extreme poverty, war zone, terminal illness, introduced David Benatar. His asymmetry argument, the idea that not being born avoids harm without missing out on pleasure, use quotes. The absence of pain is good, even if that good is not enjoyed by anyone. Benatar explore philosophical parallels with Schopenhauer. Life is suffering. Examine how societies normalize this trauma and disguise it with rituals, baby showers, celebrations, real-life analogy. A person thrown into a game they never agreed to play, with rules they never understood. Inheriting the curse, the psychological toll of existence key idea. Life imposes trauma. Anxiety and suffering is the price of being alive. Begin with a personal and relatable account of everyday despair, bills, heartbreak, existential confusion. Explore Freud's concept of the death drive, the internal pull toward destruction. A subconscious rebellion against being alive. Introduce Camus and the absurd, should I kill myself or have a cup of coffee? Explore depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, not as illness alone, but as responses to being alive in a chaotic, indifferent world. Example, kids raised in toxic environments, never given a real chance, yet expected to thrive. Quote, man is the only creature who refuses to be what he is. Camus, love as justification. The romantic lie of parenthood key idea. The decision to have children is often selfish. Masked as love. Open with a contrast. I want a child. V's. I want to give a child the best life. Use real testimonies of parents who regretted having children, a growing, honest minority. Bring in Simone de Beauvoir and feminist perspectives on motherhood and imposed roles. Critique of natalist ideologies, religious, economic, and cultural. Pressures to reproduce. Introduce Jean-Paul Sartre's concept of bad faith, lying to oneself to avoid responsibility. Explore how parents often project their insecurities, dreams, and unmet desires onto their children. Real example. A child raised to be a doctor, not because of love, but because of the parent's unfulfilled ambitions. The machinery of suffering? Society's need for new slaves' care. Idea. Birth fuels economic and institutional systems, not life itself. Start with a shocking statistic. The cost of raising a child and the economic pressures families face. Analyze how capitalism relies on birth rates to maintain labor forces and consumer bases. Introduce Byung-Chul Han's idea of the burnout society and the commodification of life. Philosophical question. Are we creating children or laborers, lovers or taxpayers? Explore real-world examples. Child labor, exploitative education. Systems. Systems that train obedience more than individuality. Tie in Foucault and biopolitics, the control of populations through institutions. Quote, where there is power, there is resistance. Foucault science meets philosophy, validating the cruelty of creation. Key idea, modern psychology. Neuroscience and behavioral science support the idea that existence is often harmful. Start differently, not with tragedy, but with data. Neuroscientific studies on suffering, trauma, and mental illness. Behavioral studies on regret, parental burnout, and long-term unhappiness. Introduce psychological anti-natalism, the empirical view that many humans experience more distress than fulfillment. Explore evolutionary psychology. Reproduction is not love, it's a biological imperative. often devoid of meaning. Conclude with the scientific question: if we truly wanted to reduce suffering, would we create life or prevent it? End with reflection: is it kinder to abstain from creating a life doomed to suffer, or to pretend that suffering is just part of the deal, the uninvited? There's a cruel trick played on every one of us, so invisible and so ancient that few ever question it. You're born, and that's it. The decision was made for you before your first breath, before your brain formed, before you had any words to scream your refusal. One day you're not. The next you're crying in fluorescent hospital lights, pushed into a world with rules, debts, pain, gravity. And none of it was yours to choose. You wake up at 6 a.m. because an alarm commands you to. You work jobs that erode your body, drain your joy, and you do it to pay for food, shelter, survival. Not luxury. Survival. You form relationships out of loneliness, stay in them out of fear, or end them and spiral into emptiness. You go to therapy to learn how to live with a mind you never asked for, shaped by a world you didn't design. To make peace. But where was peace when you were created? They called it a miracle. They said it was love. But if you ask the alcoholic who drinks just to forget his childhood, or the woman forced to smile through postpartum depression, or the war orphan whose nightmares speak louder than words, you might get a different definition of miracle, and yet no one speaks of it. The sacred silence surrounding parenthood is absolute. To question it is heresy. To resist it is betrayal. To refuse it is selfish. But what if selfishness isn't in the refusal, but in the creation? This video isn't a manifesto. It's not even a warning. It's a reckoning with a question so buried beneath centuries of celebration and religion and biology that even asking it sounds violent. Is bringing someone into the world an act of love or an act of cruelty? We'll look at this through philosophy, psychology, literature, and cold lived experience. We'll walk with the thinkers who dared to whisper doubt into the noise. From David Benatar's Anti-natalism to Schopenhauer's philosophy of suffering, from Freud's death drive to the lies we call parental love. If you've ever felt that quiet, unnameable rage at life itself, not at a person or a moment, but the whole structure of being, you're not broken, you're not alone. You're just awake, and it's time we talked about it. Silent scream. What it means to be born without consents. Amaks are so normalized that their violence goes unnoticed. Like birth, no one flinches when a child is born. They cheer, they bring flowers. But no one pauses to ask, what exactly are we celebrating? Consciousness has just been yanked out of non-existence into a world governed by time, death, entropy, trauma, and chance. This is not a neutral event. It's a sentencing passed down by parents, enforced by biology, and validated by culture. And yet the baby is silent. It doesn't sign a contract, doesn't agree to participate. It just screams, we call. That a good sign? Philosopher David Benatar, author of Better Never to Have Been, calls this the tragedy of birth. He argues that coming into existence is always a harm, even under the best circumstances. His most controversial idea is rooted in a deceptively simple asymmetry. The presence of pain is bad. The presence of pleasure is good. But the absence of pain, when no one exists to suffer, is not bad. And the absence of pleasure, when no one exists to miss it, is not bad either. It means that non-existence is preferable to existence because it contains no suffering. Not just the obvious forms: war, disease, abuse, but the subtle, chronic ones. Boredom, alienation, loneliness, disappointment, decay. These are the default settings of human life. And for what? A few brief moments of happiness? A nice vacation? A good meal? The deal is lopsided. If you're not born, you miss nothing. But if you are born, you risk everything. Look at the child born with a degenerative disease, condemned to pain from day one, or the girl raised by narcissistic parents, who teach her to hate her body, her voice, herself. Or the boy born into poverty, eating rice with salt, while billionaires throw away gold-plated scraps. Did they ask for this? Did they vote on whether to exist? You grant more ethical consideration to organ donors? Consent must be explicit. Than we do to creation itself. If you want to give blood, you must sign a form. But to give someone an entire existence, no form is needed. Just biology, impulse, and a moment of pleasure. Even the most wanted children are born into a gamble. Because life is not a gift, it is a risk. And the one taking that risk is not the parent, but the child. This is not nihilism, it's moral clarity. Arthur Schopenhauer, in On the Suffering of the World, writes, "If children were brought into the world by an act of pure reason alone, would the human race continue to exist?" He answers, "Certainly not, because reason, if unclouded by instinct and illusion, would see the weight of suffering, choose to spare others from it. But humans are not rational, they are romantic. They call babies blessings, even when the world they're born into is fractured. They say life is a beautiful struggle while medicating themselves to survive it. We speak of life,